So recently I decided to invest in a Sony A6600 as kind of a backup camera to my two Sony A7 Mark IIIs, and being a portrait photographer, naturally the first thing I wanted to do was find a small, lightweight APS-C prime lens that would be perfect for portraits. The two lenses that immediately stood out to me were the Sigma 56mm f1.4 DCDN and also the recently updated Viltrox AF 56mm f1.4e. Now the reason why these lenses seemed like the ideal candidates is because when mounting a 56mm lens to my Sony APS-C camera, this pretty much gives the full frame equivalent of an 85mm lens. And if you've seen my videos before, we all know how much I love an 85mm lens. So I decided to get a copy of both of these lenses to take out for a spin to find out which one is the best. Now right off the bat, both of these lenses are super small and lightweight and feel perfectly balanced on my Sony A6600. The Viltrox is made entirely from metal, whilst the Sigma is made from a mixture of both metal and composite materials, but in either case they both look and feel very well made. Now although neither of these lenses are advertised as having a splash or dustproof construction, the Sigma does feature a rubber O-ring around the lens mount to at least help a little bit with keeping water and dust out of the camera body. In terms of their design, both of these lenses are very simplistic and neither lens has any kind of manual buttons or switches. So that means there's no MF to AF switch, and that also means that toggling from manual focus to auto mode has to be done via the back of your camera. The manual focus ring on the Sigma has a nicely rubberized feel to it, whereas the Viltrox has a manual focus ring with just a textured metal finish. In any case, both of these dials rotate really smoothly and they're both nice and responsive, making it super easy to refine focus when shooting in manual focus mode. The Viltrox does have one other trick up its sleeve in the way of a manual aperture dial that has been declicked. And this might be a plus point for videographers who like to control the exposure via the aperture settings whilst filming. But for those of us who aren't interested at all in pissing around with manual controls on our lens, then there is an automatic mode. So once you switch this dial over to the red A marking, you can change the aperture value quite easily using the dials on the back of your camera, just like you would do with any other lens. Though the big downside to this dial is that there is absolutely no resistance between auto mode and the next value, which happens to be f16. And if you do happen to knock this ring even just marginally away from the A marker, it will automatically set the aperture value to f16, which I found way too easy to do and could get very annoying. Anyway, when it comes to price, the Viltrox is the cheaper option, coming in at £278 or $279 on Amazon, whilst the Sigma is $100 more or £100 more at £378 or $379. So this means in the first round of points, the Viltrox takes an early lead. When it comes to awarding points for build, both of these lenses deserve a point in my opinion, as they're very well made. However, when it comes to handling, I'm going to give the point to the Sigma because although the Viltrox does have the bonus of having that manual aperture dial, the fact that it can be so easily knocked away from auto mode means that it could potentially be more of a hindrance than a help, especially if you're like me and you probably won't ever want to use this and it will just be glued to auto mode anyway. Both of these lenses work flawlessly with my camera's face detect and IAF, and when shooting in good light, their performances were pretty much identical. They both managed to lock onto a subject quickly with no signs of hunting. In low light, both lenses continue to perform without any noticeable dips in speed or accuracy. When photographing George walking towards the camera in continuous burst mode, both of these lenses did a very good job of keeping locked on, with the vast majority of the shots being tack sharp and in focus. However, one thing that was apparent from these shots is that the Viltrox does have a serious amount of fringing, and unfortunately the majority of the shots that I took were littered with purple and green fringing. The Sigma, on the other hand, didn't appear to have any noticeable fringing when shooting in the same lighting conditions. When it comes to AF performance in photo mode, both of these lenses appear to be evenly matched and therefore they both deserve a point apiece. Well, for now at least. Switching over to video mode, both of these lenses did a really good job of keeping up with George as he walked towards the camera, though I would say that the Sigma provided the smoothest AF overall. As on occasion, the Viltrox would appear to quickly snap in and out of focus, which does look a little bit jarring in the end footage. When it comes to AF noise, both of these lenses are generally pretty quiet, though the Viltrox did produce a bit of a grinding noise that was picked up by the camera's built-in microphone, whilst a clicking sound could be heard on the footage recorded whilst using the Sigma lens. Both of these lenses suffer from focus breathing, unfortunately. However, the Sigma is by far the worst offender. To put it another way, this thing has heavier breathing than a pervert in a pawn shop. And I should know. These lenses aren't that good when it comes to lens flare either, with both of them showing heavy ghosting and some artifacting. Though I should add at this point that both of these lenses do come provided with lens hoods in the box, which may reduce flaring if this is something you want to avoid in your photos or video work. So at the end of this round, dishing out points is a little bit complicated because both of these lenses definitely have their quirks. But seeing as this round is really all about AF performance in video mode, I'm gonna have to give the point to the Sigma, as technically it does offer the smoothest AF performance of the two. In our Bokeh balls test, the results were very closely matched, with both lenses providing nice round orbs in the middle, which increasingly turn misshapen as they near the edges of the frame. At a push, I would say that the Viltrox provides the best results, as the orbs retain more of a circular shape at the edges, whilst the Sigma creates prominent cat's eye shaped bokeh balls. When it comes to general bokeh quality, the results again are very close, with both lenses offering a nice soft background blur when shooting wide open at f1.4. But if you had both of my bokeh balls in a vise and you told me I had to pick a winner, then I'd actually choose the Viltrox, as on closer inspection, the bokeh it produces is marginally smoother than the Sigma, but there's really not that much in it at all. So when it comes to handing out points, although the results were once again very close, I think the Viltrox just clinches it here, as it offers much more rounder bokeh balls and it has a smoother bokeh quality overall. When shooting wide open at f1.4 with these lenses, you can immediately see that the Sigma lens suffers from a noticeable pincushion distortion issue. The Viltrox does have some pincushion distortion, but not half as bad as its rival. Zooming into the center, and the Sigma provides the sharpest results with a good amount of contrast. The Viltrox is slightly softer in comparison and also has a small amount of ghosting and red fringing. At the corners, the Viltrox is ever so slightly sharper than the Sigma, but there really isn't much in it. Shooting at f1.4 at the lens's minimum focusing distances, the Sigma is able to focus slightly closer than the Viltrox. Zooming into the middle, the Sigma still offers the sharpest results, with the Viltrox tailing just behind with a marginally softer image that still features ghosting and a touch of red fringing. On a longitudinal chromatic aberration test chart, neither lens provided a perfect result, to be honest, though the Viltrox created a noticeably worse image filled with heavy cyan fringing at the top and red fringing at the bottom, whereas the Sigma created a touch of green fringing at the top and magenta below the area of sharp focus. Now, before we dive into some real life examples of what these lenses can produce, I've quickly got to mention an issue that I came across when selecting my images in Lightroom. When going through the Viltrox images, I noticed that occasionally this lens would produce photos that were out of focus, despite amber not really moving around all that much whilst the photo was being taken. Some images were just ever so slightly out of focus, whilst others were wildly out of focus and totally unusable. What's really strange is I didn't really notice the lens hunting at all whilst I was shooting. To me, it just appeared that the shots were locking on with no problems at all. However, the results clearly show otherwise. When looking at the images taken with the Sigma lens, on the other hand, it didn't seem to produce any issues like this, and all of my photos were focused correctly and were tack sharp. But despite this hiccup with the Viltrox, I've got to admit, in the end, I was really pleased with the results produced by both of these lenses. Although the focusing issues with the Viltrox did mean that I had less images to choose from at the end of the shoot, what I did capture I was very happy with, and I think the results look really good. I've got to say though, the additional clarity and contrast created by the Sigma lens does give the photos that extra little punch, and if you're planning on producing high resolution prints of your images, this will certainly make a difference. But if you're only ever going to be posting low resolution copies of your images on social media, then honestly, the results produced by the Viltrox are perfectly adequate. So when it comes to scoring, first and foremost, in light of this new condemning evidence, unfortunately, I'm going to have to deduct a point from the Viltrox lens for photo AF, as clearly it's not quite as accurate as I first thought. As for image quality, it's fairly obvious that the final point has to go to the Sigma, as clearly it's the best lens in terms of optical performance. So at the end of testing, the Sigma 56mm walks away as the winner in this head-to-head test. Despite having a few little quirks, overall this lens is a pretty good portrait lens for your APS-C camera. The Viltrox, on the other hand, unfortunately just isn't quite as good optically as the Sigma, and there are certainly some kinks to iron out with the AF on this thing, but hopefully this is something that Viltrox can fix in a future firmware update. So big news everyone, if you're interested in buying either of these lenses, I have included both US and UK affiliate links in the description below. For transparency, I do get a small kickback for any purchases made using those links, so if you do want to help support the channel, that is by far the easiest way to do that. We get some dollar bills, we keep making videos like this, you enjoy them, Jeff Bezos gets some money to make a moon base, everyone wins!